Hello, welcome to our last week in Supervision, CHLD 90C. So this is your last week in our administration class, and we've had a lot of wonderful conversations and discussions, and your group projects are coming along, and I'm very excited to see what you are developing. For your final, you will need to watch this video. It's also copied into the final assignment for you to look at there. This video leads you through how to reflect on teacher learning as you're supervising, how to reflect in ways that support teachers' professional development in respectful ways. So I want to walk through and think about how we use reflective teaching in practice. Remember to make visible what without you might perhaps never have been seen. When you're supervising teachers, this is a really important quote. Sometimes you see something from the outside they don't see in themselves. This can be strengths and it can be weaknesses. In reflective practice, when supervising adults, remember to find the successes they have and celebrate them. There is a documenting style called learning stories that teachers can use to document children's learning, and we're going to walk through an example of that in this lecture. These are the same techniques that can be used for documenting teachers' professional growth as well. So one example of that I will share with you in a few minutes. You use opportunities to observe teachers at work, you evaluate their work, then you have a reflective discussion about what you've seen. You reflect on what professional resources they may need, what growth they may need, and how to support them, and then you observe again. You might have another reflective discussion and reflect on what they need, and then give them that support, and then observe. This should look very familiar to you because it's the same practice that we use when we're doing reflective practice with children, and we're really thinking about the curriculum that we're providing for them. So emergent curriculum, play-based curriculum, Reggio Emilia, most of the philosophies that you're looking at use this type of observation, reflection, implementation, observation, reflection, implementation cycle to plan their curriculum. The same works for supervision. So one example of reflective practice was at a retreat that we did in 2018. Each staff member at Cabrillo College Children's Center and the EC department brought tokens representing their hopes and dreams for themselves as professionals and for the program in the coming year. During an all-day in-service, they wove yarn into a weaving and tied in those tokens as they discussed their goals and their plans. We documented their learning as they worked and then created a documentation to share with the whole program and the Children's Center families to talk about our hopes and plans for the coming year. This is that weaving, and this is the documentation. This beautiful hope weaving was done as a collaborative project with the EC department and the Children's Center and Lab School faculty during our staff retreat in August 2018 at Mount Madonna Retreat Center. Each staff member selected a meaningful item and then wove it into the circle as they shared their personal symbolism and hopes for themselves, our profession, and our children, families, and students. Thank you to the Trombetta family for providing resources for our ECE and Children's Center family to come together, strengthen relationships, revise the EC program plan, develop a deeper understanding of bias and tolerance, and set goals and dreams for improving the future of ECE at Cabrillo College. How fortunate we are. And so this is one example of doing reflective practice. It's when we as professionals get together and talk about what we want, not just for our program, but what do we want for ourselves as individual professionals. Remember that just like children, the teachers that you're going to be supervising and working with have a zone of proximal development, the range of tasks that teachers cannot do yet on their own, but they can do with the help of others. So many teachers are in the process of learning something and need support and scaffolding, just like children, to reach that learning goal. So the actual learning level is what a teacher can do with great competence and skill. The level of potential learning is the extent to which the teacher can perform the tasks with help, assistance, and support. To help our teacher move through that, assistance is needed, scaffolding, just like with children. So we want to provide books, resources, support materials to help them learn whatever their professional goal is. So if you're doing a reflective evaluation, the goals are realistic, they're attainable for the teacher, they're within that zone of proximal development or proximal learning, and they're appropriate to the job description and the age group they are working with. Assessment of individual teacher skills and abilities. Learning is essential for planning and implementing appropriate job skill goals. We want to make sure that we're staying within the job description we've defined for them. Observation, assessment, and evaluation should be integrated, with directors continually engaging in observation for the purpose of improving teaching and learning. Directors should be in the classroom supporting teacher growth. When we think about learning stories, it's one way to do this. That is a very positive, motivating method or framework to put it in. We think about, what do we actually see? What do we think it might mean? And what do we wonder? Notice that in this, we're keeping that objectivity that we do when we observe children. We're thinking very carefully about the difference between what we see, which is objective, detailed, descriptive, and what we think it might mean, or what we wonder the teacher might need. The reason we separate that is your thoughts about what you think it means and what you wonder about what they may need are just your thoughts. Until you talk to a teacher and actually have that supervision conversation, you don't know what's really happening. You learn a lot through those conversations. Sometimes we can see the forest and the trees at the same time by slowing down and being objective and using this reflective process instead of just focusing on one or the other. So we can keep to our program goals, we can keep to our vision, our philosophy, and still see the needs of the individual teachers. So this is a learning story. There's a link that I'll put into this week's module for you as well, called Jolene Paints. So Jolene brushes paint. And it's a story, a learning story done by a teacher for a child, but a similar type of format. I want you to get a feel for what a learning story is and how well this captures who Jolene is. Today I saw Jolene at the easel. By the time I got there with my camera, she had already applied bold areas of each color and vertical stripes at the top of the page. I thought, this is interesting. Look at how carefully she moves the brush. Jolene painted the vertical areas of color up and down. There still was white around the blue. She then carefully covered the white spaces with more blue and upward strokes of the brush. Now there was no more white between the colors. She continued to use the blue, sweeping downward. The dry brush effect was strong. It seemed to interest her as she did the same stroke again and again. She dipped the brush back into the blue paint cup and filled the dry areas with more paint. Then, surprisingly, she stopped. She put down the brush and stood there with her arms spread wide. Something was going on in her mind, but I didn't know what it could be. Maybe it could be, what should I do now? Maybe it could be, look what I did. Maybe it could be another idea for the remaining white space. She chose a brush filled with green. She began to move her brush in a circle. No more stripes. Round and round in the same spot, she moved the brush, using her wrist and fingers in a smooth and clever way. Then she moved the brush to a clear space, and round she went again. And again. And again. And again. Her hand moved with graceful ease each time. I thought, she's discovering how a brush works. She completed the final round green spot. Then she painted green over all those spots. Goodbye, round and round spots. All the spots except one were covered. They were gone. No one would ever see those spots again. That was the end of her painting. She put down her brush and left the painting sitting on the easel. I took a picture of Jolene's painting. It has broad bands of brown, indigo blue, green, and red filling the page. 3 areas of white are left. All the brushstrokes go up and down except that one remaining circle on the right. It reminds me of waterfalls in a forest. I feel relaxed, calm, and happy when looking at it. What it means. Jolene, your way of moving the brush is interesting to watch. Your hands move as gracefully as a squirrel. You are finding a way to say things and express feelings with paint that no one can say in words. Paint can say things you don't even realize you feel until they emerge on the paper. Painting is something people do all by themselves. A painter tries new things, sees and feels what happens, and tries something else. That is what you did. You do, then you see, then you build on that. It's like talking back and forth to yourself without words. Opportunities. Jolene is interested in effects of what she does with expressive materials that are at hand, so we will make sure to provide her more means for doing that kind of exploration. We'll provide more colors of paint, more sizes of brushes, and watercolor too. It would be wonderful to make it possible for others to join Jolene so more children could discover the joys of artistic expression. There's possibilities. Fluid hand movement, exploration, and reflection seem to be lifelong possibilities for Jolene. Art offers the possibility for people to come to understand not only ways of expression, but also who they are. Such discoveries cannot be said in words. The more we closely attend, the more we see, the more we learn. In this one story of painting, all of us are reminded of the possibility of listening more deeply to each unique human being. Tom Drummond is the author of this story from North Seattle Community College, Green Tree Early Childhood Center in Seattle, and Holly Kohler was the teacher at the time. I will, again, put the link up. If you want to learn more about learning stories and how to use them, please visit Tom Drummond's site, and you'll find a lot of information as well as other sample learning stories. The point of this for this class is to really think about supervision. First and foremost, when you're supervising staff and observing them, you want to be able to tell them a story of what you saw. It is so meaningful when somebody took the time to not just observe you, but really think about what they saw. And they really saw that moment. The level of detail that Tom Drummond has in the story for Jolene is very validating for Jolene's experience. The same is true with staff. When we take the time to really see them and really tell them the story of what we saw, it's very validating to them as a teacher. It speaks to the child, and it speaks to the teacher when we do it in supervision. It speaks to the child's family. It can speak to the program as a whole, to families that the teacher works with, to the other teachers the teacher works with, when you do this type of reflective supervision. It also helps us as directors. If we're doing it as teachers, it helps us as educators. But as directors, if we're doing it in supervision and really taking that time, it informs our practice as directors, and it gives us support and direction in how to move forward with our programs. There's no right way to do learning stories. The idea is everything you learned in observation. Slow down, get the story, objectively, detailed, get the story. And then think about, what are the wonderful things that we saw? What do we value in what we observed? When you're working with staff, when you're designing in-service programs, when you're working to provide them supervision and support, always start with what you see as their strengths. Growth comes from knowing that someone sees our strengths. If someone doesn't see our strengths, we're more likely to fight back defensively to show them the strengths we think they don't see. So always start from a strength-based approach, the same way you do as a teacher with children. Learning stories began in New Zealand. The idea was that they wanted to look for well-being. They want to look for the child doing something wonderful and being involved and engaged. Just like that, with a supervisor, you want to look for teachers to be involved, engaged, and look for their strong points during the day. We look for belonging. What is the child interested in? What is the teacher interested in? What are they particularly gifted in? We look for communication. We look for the child to express their point of view or feeling. We can see a teacher's philosophy by observing and learning from what we see them doing. We look for the contribution. What did the child make a contribution to the classroom? As a supervisor, you're looking for teachers. What was their contribution to the classroom? What was their contribution to the program? What about to the philosophy? We look for children to explore. We also look for teachers to explore, to take some risks, try something new they haven't tried before. Especially teachers who've been in the field for a long time, they can get into the rut of doing the same type of curriculum, the same type of interaction over and over again. I've told a lot of you how important it is for your philosophy to grow over time. Teachers should constantly grow over time. We want to see them develop new ideas, new strategies, new pathways to doing things with children. So look for that exploration. Look for teachers to try and grow and learn something. When you're writing a learning story for children, here's a simple guide. You don't have to be this detailed with teachers, but you can use this for the final as a guide. Describe what you see the teacher do and say. Pay close attention. That's the heart of the story, being able to actually see and hear what's happening. Then think about, what does it mean? What does this thing that I just observed, what does it really mean? Write about the significance of what you saw. What skills are you seeing the teacher show in the video or in the observation? What learning do you see happening? What do you think the teacher is developing as their learning skill, as their growth opportunity? What meaning making is best done in dialogue with other adults? So that means that in trying to figure out what the video means, it's best done in dialogue with a teacher or the observation. If you're doing an observation of a teacher and you're trying to do reflective practice, understanding what that observation means is best done in conversation with the teacher. When you try and decide what an observation means before you've talked to the teacher, you're missing most of the information. It's really critical that you talk to teachers and have a dialogue before you come to a conclusion about what you observed. Think about what you observed the teacher doing. What might that mean for their professional growth? Might that mean for the skills that they're wanting to develop? Describe what you can do next to support that teacher. What opportunities and possibilities might you be able to provide as a director, as a supervisor? Leave a blank page for families to respond if you're doing this for children, but leave space for the teacher to respond, to say, here's what I want. There's this great outdoor classroom training I want to go to. Could you possibly fund that? So leave space for the teacher to come with their ideas. If you're writing a learning story officially, the title's easiest done after you've done all this. It makes sense once you've done all the rest of the work. So that's the outline from Tom Drummond's page about writing learning stories, and it can be used as a reflective supervision piece as well. We're going to be practicing learning stories. There's a video in your final where you're going to watch two different teachers. You get to choose which teacher you want to reflect on. One is teacher Mel, who you see pictured here with 4 children, talking about gunplay in a preschool classroom. Another is teacher Nancy in the toddler classroom, looking at an interaction between children in the playhouse area. Think about what you see, think about what you think and what you wonder, and try and separate all those out in the final as you're talking about it. And then think about what you might do with this. How might you support their professional growth? What competencies are you seeing them show in the videos? What skill are they exhibiting? And then what is the learning story? And what is the professional growth opportunity? How could this teacher become a mentor for other teachers in your program? So I want to thank Mel and Nancy for allowing me to use these videos for this class. If you have questions, of course, as always, please let me know. Thank you.